You might want to see if anyone here from the public as well would like to speak. And with that, I'm at your disposal.
To the board, Supervisor Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. From the PowerPoint information you just gave us, would I interpret this timeline that we received that we would vacate it has October 2nd Planning Commission hearing on draft. Is that still on? And then you also mentioned one on the 16th. Are there two?
No, I think that was probably my mistake. It should be the 2nd, not the 16th.
It should be so
Yeah.
it's not the 16th.
With the possibility of being that it might not be included on that. So carry the 16th without disrupting the timeframe.
Supervisor Pinches.
On a land use affecting 2,100,000 acres, it shows where this is going to add 1 acre commercial and reduce 4 acres industrial. Could one argue that this should have been done all through a negative deck process?
If you look just at that little incremental change, probably so. But what the EIR looks at is the impacts of everything building, everything in the county.
Yeah, but basically that's where your major impact changes are going to be, is in industrial zoning and commercial zoning, right?
And a little bit of residential here and
It's
there.
just my
yeah.
point. I don't know how more, what's a small increment of change you could get when you're dealing with 2,100,000 acres, and we're only changing upward 1 acre commercial and downward 4 acres of industrial. I don't know how much more of a minimal impact you could have in a 20-year planning process.
Right. It's not much of a change from what your current plan shows, but what we're looking at is the trend line up of continuing growth, even at a fairly low rate. So over 20 years, there still is a lot of growth. The end point of that growth, yeah, really hard to measure, but it's still more than you have now, and that's what we're looking at, is going from the number of houses today, the number of stores, the number of industrial facilities, to what's going to be there in 20 years.
It shows we're losing 288 acres of open space that goes into some of the cap. How does that, where's this 288 acres, where are we losing that?
You know, I'd have to look through that and to give you a better answer, unless I can get back to you on that.
I mean, I don't see we're not losing any parkland or anything. I don't understand where that would be, why that would change.
Page you on, John?
Right here, right front.
Yeah, Patrick is telling me that that's BLM land, federal land that's being sold off and converting into private use. So it shows up as a loss of open space.
Yeah,
but
but we've had a lot of conservation easements and whatnot went into place since then, wouldn't that? I mean,
Conservation easement.
I can think of several conservation easements. So that should be a plus number more than
Yeah,
minus.
well, and that's actually an excellent comment. We can look at that in more detail. But a conservation easement generally doesn't show up on the land use map, so it doesn't really show up as a land use change of the kind that we're looking at. But that's exactly the kind of question we're looking for, is, well, where's that loss coming from, and have we considered something else? So we can definitely look into that.
A conservation easement may not change the land use designation, but it certainly changes the land use.
Yes, it does.
Okay. Any other comments from the board? Okay, hearing and seeing none. I'll take public comment at this time. Any members of the public wishing to speak to the document at this point for release to the public, please step forward. And I don't see any huge line, so I won't adamantly keep you to 3 minutes, but
I think I can do it in less than that.
Okay.
I'm Bob Simpson. Yeah, I just have one request, and I've raised this issue just in an informal setting, but one of the things that could really make the lengthening of this process less painful for all of us and be good for both the county as well as landowners is that at the end of this process, rather than the property owner going to the planning department, filing an application to formally rezone their property, instead simply to pay the fees to the general plan update team and essentially create a fast track line to rezone that property. It would reduce the burden on the planning department. It would probably more quickly increase the tax base for the county on properties because presumably everybody is rezoning because they are increasing the value of the property, and it's a positive for the landowner. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Simpson. To staff and county council, sometimes common sense such as that suggestion flies in the face of government regulation. Is this allowed to process something along those lines?
We'll be happy to look at
Yeah.
the suggestion.
This might be an area where common sense and government regulation go hand in hand, and it'd certainly be a delight to find something like that, so. Supervisor Pinches.
I would think, correct me if I'm wrong, County Council, that once this general plan is adopted and these new land use designations are put in place, isn't that the day of the adoption that's when the actual law changes? So the process, even though the county might take a while for that process, in effect, the landowner on that date approval has that new land use designation, right?
I don't believe that's exactly correct, but I think it's in the right direction, but there are ordinance amendments that have to take place.